Sam Harris and Lex Fridman argue about AI, or artificial intelligence. Coming up in 30 seconds. First time reaction. Hey everybody, this is Matt Criscuolo. This is a little something different. I happen to be a big fan of Sam Harris. This came across my YouTube feed, so I thought I would check it out. I don't know who Lex Fridman is, but I probably have heard him before. So let's check out what they have to say about AI. And by the way, guys, if you like what I'm doing, please consider supporting the channel in any way, even a buck, a dollar, a peso, anything, a lira, a shekel. What the hell is a shekel? Anyway, that's what popped into my mind. Let's check it out, guys. Let's see what they have to say about artificial intelligence.
Both you and Elon think that with AI you're summoning demons. Summoning a demon. Maybe not in those poetic terms, but...
Well, potentially. I mean, so
potentially.
Three very parsimonious assumptions, I think, here. Scientifically, parsimonious assumptions get me there. Any of which could be wrong, but it seems like the weight of the evidence is on their side. One is that it comes back to this topic of substrate independence, right? Anyone who's in the business of producing intelligent machines must believe ultimately that there's nothing magical about having a computer made of meat. You can do this in the kinds of materials we're using now, and there's no special something that presents a real impediment to producing human level intelligence in silico, right? Again, an assumption. I'm sure there are a few people who still think there is something magical about biological systems, but leave that aside. Given that assumption, and given the assumption that we just continue making incremental progress, doesn't have to be Moore's law, it just has to be progress that just doesn't stop. At a certain point, we'll get to human level intelligence and beyond. And human level intelligence, I think, is also clearly a mirage, because anything that's human level is going to be superhuman unless we decide to dumb it down, right? I mean, my phone is already superhuman as a calculator, right? So why would we make the human level AI, just as good as me as a calculator? So I think if we continue to make progress, we will be in the presence of superhuman competence for any act of intelligence or cognition that we care to prioritize. It's not to say that we'll create everything that a human could do. Maybe we'll leave certain things out. But anything that we care about, and we care about a lot, and we certainly care about anything that produces a lot of power, I think we care about scientific insights and ability to produce new technology and all of that. We'll have something that's superhuman. And then the final assumption is just that there have to be ways to do that are not aligned with a happy coexistence with these now more powerful entities than ourselves. So, and I would guess, and this is a kind of a rider to that assumption, there are probably more ways to do it badly than to do it perfectly. That is perfectly aligned with our well-being. And when you think about the consequences of non-alignment, when you think about you're now in the presence of something that is more intelligent than you are, right? Which is to say more competent, right? Unless you've, and obviously there are cartoon pictures of this where we could just, there's just an off switch and we could just turn off the off switch, or they're tethered to something that makes them, our slaves in perpetuity, even though they're more intelligent. But those scenarios strike me as a failure to imagine what is actually entailed by greater intelligence, right? So if you imagine something that's legitimately more intelligent than you are, and you're now in relationship to it, right? You're in the presence of this thing, and it is autonomous in all kinds of ways because it had to be more intelligent than you are. I mean, you built it to be all of those things. We just can't find ourselves in a negotiation with something more intelligent than we are. You know, and we can't. So we have to have found the subset of ways to build these machines that are perpetually amenable to our saying, "Oh, that's not what we meant. That's not what we intended. Could you stop doing that? Come back over here and do this thing that we actually want." And for them to care, for them to be tethered to our own sense of our own well-being, such that, you know, I mean, their utility function is, you know, their primary utility function is to, you know, this is, I think, Stuart Russell's, you know, cartoon plan is to figure out how to tether them to a utility function that has our own estimation of what's going to improve our well-being as its master, you know, reward, right? So it's like all that this thing can get as intelligent as it can get, but it only ever really wants to figure out how to make our lives better by our own view of better. Now, not to say there wouldn't be a conversation about, you know, I mean, because there's all kinds of things we're not seeing clearly about what is better, and if we were in the presence of a genie or an oracle that could really tell us what is better, well, then we presumably would want to hear that, and we would modify our sense of what to do next in conversation with these minds. But I just feel like it is a failure of imagination to think that being in relationship to something more intelligent than yourself isn't in most cases a circumstance of real peril, because it is in every, like, just to think of how everything on Earth has to, if they could think about their relationship to us, if birds could think about what we're doing, right, they would, I mean, the bottom line is they're always in danger of our discovering that there's something we care about more than birds, right? Or there's something we want that disregards the well-being of birds. And you know, obviously much of our behavior is inscrutable to them. Occasionally we pay attention to them, and occasionally we withdraw our attention, and occasionally we just kill them all for reasons they can't possibly understand. But if we're building something more intelligent than ourselves, by definition, we're building something whose horizons of value and cognition can exceed our own, and in ways where we can't necessarily foresee, again, perpetually, that they don't just wake up one day and decide, okay, well, these humans need to disappear.
So,
okay, I'm curious to know what you guys think about that. I like Sam Harris because I like the way he unpacks these ideas in a way that's comprehensive. You know, he's not speaking in, you know, very overly sophisticated terminology. I can follow it myself. I think that's probably, you know, I'm assuming that you guys are following this too. I think it's fascinating. I don't know much about AI, artificial intelligence, but when I heard Sam saying that these artificial intelligence could potentially get out of control to the point where they could hurt us, but why? How could that even happen? I guess the artificial intelligence ultimately can come to those conclusions somehow. I mean, are these computers and are they designed in a way to come up and make deductions and think independently and autonomously like that? That's pretty scary. I mean, in a way, you could see if you could harness that in a way that is, you know, that's good for our well-being as a species. Then I could see how, wow, that's some powerful stuff. But, you know, the double-edged sword of that is that you know, if it's not contained and controlled, it can get ugly, I guess. Is that true? What do you think? Let's see what Lex has to say.
I think I agree with most of the initial things you said. What I don't necessarily agree with, of course nobody knows, but that the more likely set of trajectories that we're going to take are going to be positive. That's what I believe, in the sense that the way you develop, I believe the way you develop successful AI systems will be deeply integrated with human society. And for them to succeed, they're going to have to be aligned in the way we humans are aligned with each other, which doesn't mean we're aligned. There's no such thing, or I don't see there's such thing as a perfect alignment, but they're going to be participating in the dance, in the game theoretical dance of human society, and as they become more and more intelligent. There could be a point beyond which we are like birds to them.
But what about an intelligence explosion of some kind?
So I believe the explosion will be happening, but there's a lot of explosion to be done before we become like birds. I truly believe that human beings are very intelligent in ways we don't understand. It's not just about chess. It's about all the intricate computation we're able to perform, common sense, our ability to reason about this world, consciousness. I think we're doing a lot of work we don't realize is necessary to be done in order to truly become, truly achieve super intelligence. And I just think there will be a period of time that's not overnight. The overnight nature of it will not literally be overnight. It'll be over a period of decades. So my sense is...
But why would it be that way? But just draw an analogy from recent successes, like something like AlphaGo or AlphaZero. I forget the actual metric, but it was something like this algorithm, which wasn't even it wasn't bespoke for chess playing. In the matter of, I think it was 4 hours, played itself so many times and so successfully that it became the best chess playing computer. It was not only better than every human being, it was better than every previous chess program in a matter of a day, right? So so just imagine, again, we don't have to recapitulate everything about us, but just imagine building a system, and who knows when we'll be able to do this, but at some point the 100 favorite things about human cognition will be analogous to chess, in that we will be able to build machines that very quickly outperform any human, and then very quickly outperform the last algorithm that outperformed the humans. Like something like the AlphaGo experience seems possible for facial recognition and detecting human emotion and natural language processing, right? Like, well, it's just everyone, even math people, math heads, tend to have bad intuitions for exponentiation, right? I mean, we noticed this during COVID. I mean, you have some very smart people who still couldn't get their minds around the fact that, an exponential is really surprising. I mean, things double and double and double and double again, and you don't notice much of anything changes, and then the last, 2 stages of doubling swamp everything, right? And it just seems like that, to assume that there isn't a deep analogy between what we're seeing for the more tractable problems like chess to other modes of cognition. It's like once you crack that problem, it seems, because for the longest time it was impossible to think we were going to make headway on in AI. It's like
chess and Go was seen as impossible.
Go seemed unattainable. Even when chess had been cracked, Go seemed unattainable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually Stuart Russell was behind the people that were saying it's unattainable, right? Because it seemed like it's intractable problem.
Right.
But there's something different about the space of cognition that's detached from human society, which is what chess is, meaning like just thinking, having actual exponential impact on the physical world is different. I tend to believe that for AI to get to the point where it's super intelligent, it's going to have to go through the funnel of society. And for that, it has to be deeply integrated with human beings. And for that, it has to be aligned.
But even you're talking about like actually hooking us up to like the neural link, we're going to be the brainstem to the robot overlords?
That's a possibility as well. But what I mean is, in order to develop autonomous weapon systems, for example, which are highly concerning to me, that both U.S. and China are participating in it now. That in order to develop them and for them to have more and more responsibility to actually do military strategic actions, they're going to have to be integrated into human beings doing the strategic action. They're going to have to work alongside with each other. And the way those systems will be developed will have the natural safety like switches that are placed on them as they develop over time, because they're going to have to convince humans. Ultimately, they're going to have to convince humans that this is safer than humans. They're going to, you know.
Well, self-driving cars is a good test case here, because like we're obviously we've made a lot of progress, and we can imagine what total progress would look like. I mean, that would be amazing. And it's canceling in the U.S. 40,000 deaths every year based on ape-driven cars, right? So it's a excruciating problem that we've all gotten used to because there was no alternative. But now that we can dimly see the prospect of an alternative, which, if it works in a super intelligent fashion, maybe we go down to zero highway deaths, right? Or certainly we go down by orders of magnitude, right? So maybe we have 400 rather than 40,000 a year,
right?
And it's easy to see that there's not a missile. So obviously this is not an example of super intelligence. This is narrow intelligence, but the alignment problem isn't so obvious there. But there are potential alignment problems there. Just imagine if some woke team of engineers decided that we have to tune the algorithm some way. I mean, there are situations where the car has to decide who to hit. I mean, there's just bad outcomes where you're going to hit somebody, right? Now, we have a car that can tell what race you are, right? So we're going to build the car to preferentially hit white people because white people have had so much privilege over the years. This seems like the only ethical way to kind of redress those wrongs of the past. That's something that could get get produced as an artifact, presumably, of just how you built it, and you didn't even know you engineered it that way, right? You caused
machine learning.
Yeah.
You put some kind of constraints on it to where it creates those kinds of outcomes.
You basically built a racist algorithm and you didn't even intend to, or you could intend to, right? And it would be aligned with some people's values, but misaligned with other people's values. But it's like there are interesting problems even with something as simple and obviously good as self-driving cars.
But there's a leap that I just think it'd be exact. But those are human problems. I just don't think there'll be a leap with autonomous vehicles. First of all, sorry, there are a lot of trajectories which will destroy human civilization. The argument I'm making, it's more likely that we'll take trajectories that don't. So I don't think there'll be a leap with autonomous vehicles will all of a sudden start murdering pedestrians, because once every human on Earth is dead, there'll be no more fatalities, sort of unintended consequences of, and it's difficult to take that leap. Most systems as we develop and they become much, much more intelligent in ways that will be incredibly surprising, like stuff that DeepMind is doing with protein folding, which is scary to think about, and I'm personally terrified about this, which is the engineering of viruses using machine learning, the engineering of vaccines using machine learning, right? The engineering of, for research purposes, pathogens using machine learning, and like the ways that can go wrong. I just think that there's always going to be a closed loop supervision of humans before the AI becomes super intelligent. Not always, much more likely to be supervision. Except, of course, the question is how many dumb people are in the world, how many evil people are in the world. My theory, my hope is, my sense is that the number of intelligent people is much higher than the number of dumb people that know how to program, and the number of evil people. I think smart people and kind people outnumber the others. Except
we have to add another group of people, which are just the smart and otherwise good but reckless people, right? The people who will flip a switch on, not knowing what's going to happen. They're just kind of hoping that it's not going to blow up the world. We already know that some of our smartest people are those sorts of people. We know we've done experiments, and this is something that Martin Rees was whinging about before the Large Hadron Collider got booted up, I think. We know there are people who are entertaining experiments or even performing experiments where there's some chance, not quite infinitesimal, that they're going to create a black hole in the lab and suck the whole world into it, right? I mean, like that's not you're not a crazy person to worry about that based on the physics. And so it was with the Trinity test. There were some people who were still checking their calculations, and they were off. We did nuclear tests where we were off significantly in terms of the yield, right? So it was like,
and they still flipped the switch.
Yeah, they still flipped the switch, and sometimes they flipped the switch not to win a world war or to save 40,000 lives a year. They just
to see what happens.
Intellectual curiosity.
Yep.
Like, this is what I got my grant for. This is where I'll get my Nobel Prize if that's in the cards. It's on the other side of this switch, right? And I mean, we are apes with egos who are massively constrained by very short-term self-interest, even when we're contemplating some of the deepest and most interesting and most universal problems we could ever set our attention towards. Like, just if you read James Watson's book, The Double Helix, right, about them cracking the structure of DNA. One thing that's amazing about that book is just how much of it, almost all of it, is being driven by very apish, egocentric social concerns. Like that, the algorithm that is producing this scientific breakthrough is human competition. If you're James Watson, right? It's like, I'm going to get there before Linus Pauling, and it's so much of his bandwidth is captured by that. Right now, that becomes more and more of a liability when you're talking about producing technology that can change everything in an instant. We're talking about not only understanding. We're just at a different moment in human history. We're not, when we're doing research on viruses, we're now doing the kind of research that can cause someone somewhere else to be able to make that virus or weaponize that virus, or it's just I don't know. I mean, our wisdom is. It does not seem like our wisdom is scaling with our power, right? And like that,
Yeah.
That seems like insofar as wisdom and power become unaligned, I get more and more concerned.
Wisdom scaling with power. Now that's a very, I almost invariably every time I listen to Sam Harris, I get these little, he'll throw in one of these little, phrases that stick with me. But wisdom scaling with power. And that's where I think, Sam Harris, it's funny. I have heard some people accuse Sam Harris of being almost a little naive in that he does believe that humanity has more good-willed intention built into it by nature than the opposite. And that he tends to trust people to do the right thing for the most part. But in this case, it sounds like, I didn't get that from this. Actually, I was picking up that maybe Lex was actually seeing more of the bright side of this stuff and how humans relate, how humans create and align with AI. I don't know. What do you guys think? I thought this was very interesting. I don't know a lot about AI, but I have been hearing more about it, obviously, in the last few years. And is it something that we should be concerned about? Is it something that you are concerned about? What do you think? Is it something that we should be excited about and embrace? Is there a lot of potentiality there that we can harness? And is it just like basically any other advancement in human history where there's, some good and bad in it, and that we should just dive in and just, go with it? What do you think? surely it looks like to me like regardless that that as time marches on, that we are going to be, having more AI in our lives. So it may not even be a question anymore of like, if, but more like when, and stuff like that. I'm curious to know what you think. I always like to learn from you guys. So if you could put something in the comments, I'd appreciate it. Guys, listen, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. And you take it easy. And if it's really easy, take it twice.